Hello everybody, it's lovely to see you guys again and I hope you're doing really well. Thanks for coming back and it is lovely to see you. So I'm just going to crack on with my video as usual. I don't have much introduction and today I wanted to expand more on something that somebody commented about on one of my other videos. They asked something about how I got my diagnosis because, you know, it's something that a lot of people struggle to find how to get a diagnosis for DID because it's not known about by most, doctors or, your average sort of mental health professionals that will deal with depression and anxiety. For example, my local place that I went to for my anxiety and depression side of things didn't know what DID was. So it is something that can be really difficult to get a diagnosis for. Basically I wanted to explain a little bit about the process about how I got my diagnosis. I feel like I might have touched on this in the past, but there is no harm in trying to make it clearer and explain it a bit better, and to make a video about it. So let's crack on. So to start with, I did a lot of research about different dissociative disorders. I wanted to know kind of what to ask, where to look, sort of self-diagnose in a way, but not exactly. And again, before I got diagnosed, I felt like I had a dissociative disorder, but I didn't know exactly what it was. I knew that DID was a thing, and I identified with a lot of those symptoms, but not all of them. So I thought perhaps it could be otherwise specified dissociative disorder. Either way, I was watching a YouTuber, who I will link, who lives in my country, so they come from England, and they shared where they got their diagnosis from. And that was really helpful because then I could look up that and I could see if there were any clinics close to me, or how that would work. And basically I looked into the place that they had spoke about. So it's kind of a crazy world, but that's how I found the place that I ultimately went to. I looked at their website and I took a long time thinking about if I was going to contact them or not, trying to figure out what I would say to them, because a big thing before I was diagnosed was thinking that people would not believe me, and thinking that, you need to make it seem like a big deal or else they won't care. Which obviously is a big deal, but you have a lot of worries and anxieties, and you don't know exactly what they want to hear to take you seriously. A whole plethora of thoughts running around my head thinking, do I do this, do I not, what do I write? So I went on their website, and I believe on their website there's a contact us box, and I used that. I basically went through and typed stuff out and deleted it, and I was thinking, do I send an email? But then it was like in the night time, spur of the moment, I was just like, bish bash bosh, wrote it up and sent it without even checking it through, because I had spent so much time delaying and thinking about, will I do this, won't I do this? So in the middle of the night I was like, right, we're doing this, sent it off. And I believe I didn't hear back for quite a while, but then one day I did get an email from them, and I was honestly really overjoyed that they'd even considered listening to my ramble that I'd written in the middle of the night. And so from there, I don't remember exactly the first messages back and forth that happened, because for some reason I can't find them, my emails. But from there, the next step was to do 2 different preliminary questionnaires to go through so that they can have a look at them and sort of decide whether or not going down the path of looking for a diagnosis is worth it. Because the other big factor is that it costs a lot of money. And this was essentially the only way of getting a diagnosis for me, because the NHS doesn't really do dissociative disorders, as far as I'm aware. So they want to make sure that it is worth you doing the diagnosis, because it's going to cost you a lot, so there is that as well. So you do these 2 questionnaires. They are called the DES, which is the Dissociative Experiences Scale, and you do the SDQ-20, which is the Somatoform Dissociation Questionnaire. I don't know exactly what that means, but I can give you a very small sort of example of what those questionnaires are sort of asking about. So the SDQ-20, the Somatoform Dissociation Questionnaire, felt much more like physical sort of symptoms. I'll just give you some examples. So I hear sounds from nearby as if they were coming from far away. People or things seem bigger than usual. Sort of things about more physical experiences. Like, it didn't, to me at the time, I didn't think that I had any of those symptoms, but as I reflected on them, it sort of came up a bit more. I cannot speak, or I can only whisper. I'm paralysed for a while. I go stiff for a while. It is as if my body or part of it has disappeared. So these sort of very physical feeling symptoms, and I don't know exactly what I scored on that, so I'm not gonna, go into too much detail about what I put down for a lot of these questions. But that was the first part, or one of the first parts. The second part is the Dissociative Experiences Scale, the DES. And some of those sort of questions are a lot longer. They're more sort of examples of situations, and it's more to do with the dissociation side of things. So one of the big questions that's a very good indicator is when you are in a car and you're driving for a long time, do you ever sort of suddenly realise that you've travelled further than you thought, or you suddenly realise, oh look, I'm here, and you don't really fully remember driving all that way. A lot of people will experience that, and it is a form of dissociation, because everybody dissociates a little bit, so zoning out. But that is an example of doing that. So a lot of these questions sort of go into more life examples of how you dissociate. So I'll see if I can find one that sort of shows that quite well. So one that really resonated for me, and this is literally number 2 on their list, is some people find that sometimes they are listening to someone talk and they suddenly realise that they did not hear part or all of what was said. And then you select a number to show what percentage of the time this happens to you, 0 being never and 100% being always. So it's quite thorough and you've got all of the percentages like 10 to 100 to show how often these things happen to you, which I found a little bit easier to do. And again, they're all sort of life experiences about whether you dissociate, whether you experience those things. There is examples of these online, and I can link to those so that you can have a look at these kind of questions yourself. So those are the first 2 questionnaires that I was asked to complete before they even moved further with deciding what to do. There was a third questionnaire. I don't remember it very well because I got incredibly anxious and nervous about it. It was to do with daydreaming and maladaptive daydreaming, which is common with dissociative disorders. And I tried to answer the questions, but I kept getting very panicky because I felt like I wasn't answering them correctly. And I felt like I didn't understand the questions very well. It was a very confusing time. But basically, the point of me telling you this is the fact that I communicated with them. I was back and forth with emails with them, and I explained that this other questionnaire was very distressing to me, and they informed me that I didn't have to do it. So they're very accommodating. That's the point of that story. They listen to your struggles and try and be as accommodating as possible. So that was the first 3 questionnaires that I had to do before they would move forwards with me. So they looked at those. They obviously decided whether or not it was worth me going forwards, and I believe that took some time as well. This whole process takes a very long time. I could be wrong, but if I remember checking my emails, it was something like I started the process at the end of the year, and it was about April when I actually got seen and diagnosed. So it does take a couple of months, but I feel like it was longer than that. I could be wrong. So then they did decide that it would be worth me going for the interview. The interview is called the Structural Clinical Interview for Dissociative Disorders under the DSM-5. So that's its full name. It's essentially a structured interview that they will conduct, and they decided that that would be the right decision for me to go down. And so that was the next step. I met, first of all, with the lovely lady who was going to do the interview. However, this was all during COVID lockdown and strict regulations, which was kind of handy for me because I live very far away from where the Pottergate Centre actually is. So they had moved to doing everything online and virtually, so that was actually really helpful for me. It might not be for everybody because sometimes it's the in-person aspect that helps to help your alters feel comfortable to answer these questions. So either way, it was quite convenient for me because I find travelling very stressful. So, the interview. So, I met this lady first. I met her through Zoom, I think it was, just to get to know each other very briefly. I think it was a 15-minute conversation. She talked me through what was going to happen and just made me feel a bit more comfortable, made my alters feel more comfortable, and made us feel like we were going to be listened to and considered. So that was the first time I met her. The second time was the interview itself. I have a summary of how the entire interview went with me. I've got, the documentation here. It's probably backwards for you, but again, I apologise for that. But ultimately, I think it was about an hour and a half, and they were similar questions to what had already been asked. But the brilliant thing, and I'm sure I've already said about this, the brilliant thing about this was she went through each question with me and explained it if I didn't seem to understand. Especially with me, it just goes to show that they will tailor it to you. They listen to you, they know, they can see if you're struggling, they can see if you're having difficulty, and they will tailor it to you. So I kept being very confused around the whole topic of amnesia. I seemed to believe that I didn't have any amnesia. So when she would ask the questions, and then she would reword it, or she would clarify certain parts. So for a lot of them, for example, it would be, have you experienced this? you know, in your life? And I would be like, well, recently it's not been, and she would have to clarify, well, in your life have you ever experienced this in your whole life? Just to clarify that to me, to bring it back to my attention, so I wasn't getting too focused on the here and now, because the whole interview can be quite stressful, because again, I had a lot of anxiety, and worries that perhaps I wouldn't be listened to, or things. Anyway, if you would like, I can do a deeper video about the interview itself, and I can talk a bit more about what the questions will be like, and how they sort of talk to you, and my experience with it, if that would be interesting for you. But if not, I'm not going to go into massive amounts of detail here. So that was the interview, and it was incredibly emotional for us as a system. And I think, again, as I've spoken in the past, my youngest daughter, Ashley, got very upset that she was never going to see this woman again, this lady who had in a way spoken to her. So she got very emotional and had a big feelings cry about that. And then some more time passed, and we got asked to have another Zoom conversation with her, just to clarify a couple of things, and to make sure that she understood exactly what I was saying, because she was going through a transcript and a recording of everything that, you know, we had said, and if she wasn't certain on something, she asked me to clarify that in this third time of meeting her. So that was, again, that made us feel like she was really considering it. She wasn't just rushing us through or anything like that. It was a very thorough process, and that really did reassure us, the fact that she was like, look, not quite certain about this, can you just elaborate on what you mean by that, so that then she could get a better understanding. And again, that meant a lot to us. It was a really good experience. So yes, that was basically it. Then we just had some more emails back and forth to confirm payment and things like that as well, because, as I will always say, it's a massive privilege that I was able to afford this. I'd been saving up for a long time for this, and it's not fair that it's so expensive, because there's so many other people that won't be able to afford this, that will be struggling without a diagnosis. So I do always appreciate that privilege of mine. But ultimately, a long way down the line, we got an email to confirm our diagnosis, and we also got a letter in a big brown envelope like this, and it comes with, again, this is backwards, so I'm just showing you kind of how many pages this is. So there's quite a lot of pages. All of this white paper at the back is her going through every stage of the interview and describing what her observations were, and then all of these brownish pages are explaining what the interview is, where its clinical background comes from, and how it's been useful in the past, and briefly summarising the interview itself. So it's quite a hefty lot of paper, very thorough, and again, having that physical copy again makes us feel very comforted that we were considered, listened to, and it has been made a reality for us, you know. So it's a very treasured thing for us that we've got this in paper, that a doctor, you know, a psychologist has said this is what you have. So it's a very comforting thing for us. So yes, that's the process. I do hope that was easy to understand and clear enough. I know at times I can be a bit scatterbrained and forget things. So if you do have any other questions, please let me know. Thank you to the person that made this comment to inspire me to make this video, and I hope this helps you even further. And thank you so much for watching, everyone. Really appreciate it, really do. And I look forward to seeing you again next week. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. I really hope you have a good day, and thanks so much for watching. Bye bye!